Now, if you're bored of the current format and want to see what the future has in store, I got you covered. Today, I'm not showing you guys just one, not two, but 5 different rogue decks with the potential to enter the tiered meta in the future. And I'm going to show you guys all of this with a potential deck list to go with it. Now, many of these decks are currently in rogue status, but at their prime, they were top tier meta decks and they're gaining support, hopefully trying to regain some of the glories that they have experienced in the past. Although the new support aren't out yet, some of these decks you can still play them right now as a rogue deck. Others, you gotta wait a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of months, but you can pick them up early, while they're not in demand so that you can save a couple of bucks here and there. So while I was trying to cook up some of these new future deck lists, I was also doing some actual cooking with today's video sponsor, HelloFresh. Who doesn't like a good combo tutorial? And HelloFresh is essentially that, but for your food. They make it so simple. Whether you're trying to save money, eat better, or stress less, HelloFresh is here to help you do all three. Join America's #1 meal kit today and say hello to your most delicious year yet with fresh ingredients, chef-crafted recipes at a price you'll like, delivered straight to your door. No more slow playing at the fridge, wondering how to make dinner. Give HelloFresh a try and choose from 30 plus calorie smart or protein smart recipes each week. Everything arrives pre-portioned and right at your doorstep. And the best part, reward yourself for learning a new dish with a sweet treat. HelloFresh agrees. In fact, they're giving all new subscribers free dessert for life. That means you'll enjoy a totally free dessert item with every single HelloFresh delivery. Now that's important. Click the link in the description or use my code and get 16 free meals plus the free dessert for life while the subscription is active. And thank you HelloFresh for sponsoring this video. I'll just give off the 2 honorable mentions right away. One Fiendsmith and the other is going to be Gimmick Puppet. I don't have deck lists for these, so I'm just going to throw them in the honorable mentions. I do believe that they are going to be very powerful. Even without the FTK, I think can generate enough bodies. I wonder if Argent Chaos Force is still going to be here. FTK likely will be addressed before it even comes out, otherwise Konami's going to have some problem with people complaining about the format. And Fiendsmith, right now, I just don't have a comfortable list to share with you because I'm getting killed by Bestials and I'm not really comfortable with it just yet. But I do believe that they have insane potential. But let's go into some of the things that I can confirm that have potential, starting with number 1. Yubel. Now, Yubel has started to top recently with branded Yubel topping, I believe, a 400-500 person regional top 4. X1 record, solid standing, I would say, especially when they went in pre-Legacy of Destruction, which means we do not have the field spell, Nightmare Throne, nor Grave Squirmer, but they mixed it in with the branded package, a fusion deck meeting the Super Poly Maker, Yubel, of course, GX fan favorite. Why is Jaden merged with Yubel? Super Poly got played and they merged the 2 characters together. Didn't know it worked with people, and I don't want to figure out why, but in terms of potential, this deck has some very high potential. One, of course, you can mix with Branded, you can also mix it with Fiendsmith. I highlighted a combo, I guess, a few videos ago. If you guys haven't checked it out, go check it out, where you can go from 1 Nightmare Throne to a board of 5 negates. It's really silly, and it's protected thanks to another upcoming Yubel support from the value book. Now, that's the OCG. OCG has a value book, and it's Phantom of Yubel. Essentially, it's a contact fuse Yubel that can convert the opponent's effect. Converting effect is fantastic because it changes the effect rather than fully negating it. But you can basically count it as a form of negation, which changes the effect to destroy a 0/0 monster from the deck, which means you can blow up one of your Yubels and summon out more Yubels. So, it's good news for anyone that's trying to play Yubel. So there's a lot of growth for this deck. Here's one of the boards that a Yubel player can generate with the help of a few Unchained cards, such as Shavara, Lord Yama, and Unchained Soul of Rage. Let's look at what's available on the board. I think there's about 3 removals here, one being the pop destruction from Escape of the Unchained. You're likely going to destroy your Unchained Soul of Rage plus your opponent's card. That's one, and that's going to get revived by the Lord Yama, so you still have the removal there. That's still live. Plus, you can even use the effect changer to disrupt your opponent as well, so there's lots going on here. You can even go into an SP Little Knight, so you can then banish one of your opponent's cards along the way. In terms of defensive mechanics, effect changer through the Samsara D Lotus, the Yubel plus the Nightmare Pain will now absorb most of the attacks coming your way, so that has to be answered through, or else it's just going to be a self-TK right there. And not to mention there's follow-up coming from the Nightmare Pain because you get to add more cards by destroying your other cards. And with the field spell, you just get to summon out higher or lower level Yubels whenever they get removed from the field. So this is what we have so far. But who knows what the future has in store for Yubel post-ban list, post-support. Maybe we'll get the Phantom of Yubel much earlier. Next, we have Chimera, but specifically Illusion Chimera. Now, in Legacy of Destruction, we're going to be getting a few more Diabell Star cards, including Diabez, the original Sin. This is the illusion monster that essentially functions as an anti-spell fragrance for trap cards. You can't just activate Imperm from hand. All spells and traps need to be set before they get to activate, and if you set a trap card, they're kind of locked in. You set a quick play spell, it's kind of locked in. In fact, I think this singular card, the Diabez, the original, screws over Runic entirely. Like, just putting it on board, what is a Runic player going to play now? They actually have to set cards before they can play. The field spell becomes useless. But anyways, let's go into the illusion aspect of this. Nightmare Apprentice. This particular monster acts as a free special summon, like a Galaxy Soldier. And the reason why it's so good is because on special summon of this card, you get to add an illusion monster. What the Branded Chimera deck lacked before was that if your normal summon got choked by some sort of hand trap, you couldn't really extend anymore, especially if you don't have the proper follow-up. But now you get the first play for free, plus you get to play the Diabell Star engine because there is a Sinful Spoil Trap that summons out an illusion monster, and if you summon out the Nightmare Apprentice with this card during any phase but the main phase 1, you will be able to get the effect. Note that the effect coming from this Sinful Spoil Trap card, you cannot activate the monster's effect during the main phase, so that part kinda sucks, but since you can summon it during, you know, all the other phases, you still get your search effect and use that to kind of lead into the Chimera branded play. Not to mention that if you're a skilled, you know, Chimera player, you understand the value of maintaining your monsters, getting the additional body, and just maintaining a decent hand advantage. And you can search stuff like the Candleman as well, just in case you need one, because the Candleman, if it lands on the field, it is one of the worst experiences where your whole board gets locked out and you have to end on a crappy field. But I don't really have an end board for this. End board, think about double Chimera and maybe even the Diabez on the field with the Diabell Star. There's just lots of ways to play. Maybe we can actually cut out some of the stuff that are just fusion based and perhaps put in a couple of link cards as well, because you don't have to rely on Baphomet's effect anymore. Deck number 3, Centur-Ions. This deck is already annoying as it is with the Hot Red Dragon King Calamity turn skip, and it only gets better from there post Legacy of Destruction. They gain 3 new cards, 1 spell card, 1 monster, 1 extra deck monster. The extra deck monster is probably one of the most key monsters to be added to there because it takes away 1 key weakness. The Bestials used to be a weakness where you can banish the Primera so that they can't put it back into the back row and you don't have to deal with a second Synchro Summon, but this one picks up monsters and puts it to the back row from the banish or the graveyard, and so it just really took away one of the key weaknesses against the deck. Not only that, on the field it protects your spells and traps from being destroyed by card effects, so that also is pretty huge. So your back row is protected. Basically, the back row is protecting the front row is protecting the back row. It's got a pretty neat chain to it, almost like those Dark Magician fusion with the Eternal Soul combination where nothing can really be destroyed. It's got a similar feel to that. And another really cool card has to be that spell card, Wake Up Centurion. It generates a token level 4 or 8 for you to use. I think that part is already pretty decent, but it's the graveyard effect. Being able to banish it and dump a card into the graveyard, you can dump anything that has a graveyard effect as well for Centurion, including one of the older spell cards where you can banish it to put one of your graveyard Centurions back onto the spell and trap zone. So for example, if you want to use Primera twice, you can normal summon Primera, not use the effect somehow or it got negated, and then synchro it off going into your first 12 being Arcuella. Arcuella was going to add another card into your hand. Rather than drawing a card, it gets to add cards, and it's more defensive. It protects your back row, spells and traps from being destroyed. Okay, so now you have that particular monster set. And also, it's a dragon, which is why you saw the duality earlier in the deck list, so that you can use it to make Crimson Dragon as well. So it's actually pretty cheesy, if you ask me. And so, you can use that and generate some free monsters, so ending on a second Synchro 12 isn't really, out of the question, and that means you have a main phase Hot Red Dragon King Calamity lock. That's pretty cool. Or you can turn it into a Blazar Dragon and then still make King Calamity lock with the other 2 monsters that you have in the back row. So we're taking away the Bestial weakness, and we're also taking away the main phase weakness in the deck. So this deck is something that could call for a ban on the Hot Red Dragon King Calamity, because the turn skip seems so easy to do now, and there's very little that someone can answer for it. Deck number 4, moving down the timeline, we have Snake Eye Infernoid. This is something you're gonna have to wait a little bit for, because the support isn't really coming out until like post-terminal revenge from Battles of Legend, but this deck does have a lot of promise. Oh, that really depends on how the ban list is going to take care of the Snake Eye stuff, but if they don't take care of all parts of it, then we still have a chance to actually play this variant of the deck. The deck is very, very strong, don't get me wrong, and the new support just makes it even better. I mean, you can technically still play it right now, it's just not as good. Void Feast is still a very powerful card, being able to summon out your Drytrons and your Sedget, and then now you have a double negate. So you're still easily making a mass negate board. And because Drytron is level 1 and it's a fire monster, you can quickly just summon that monster out via the original Sinful Spoil, which is another reason why I don't think they're really going to touch that card just yet. I mean, it deserves a touch, don't get me wrong, but it's one of the reasons why you probably won't see it. And likely the deck is going to be playing a copy of Instant Fusion so that they can summon out the Infernoid Evil, the level 1 fire Infernoid from the extra deck, and has some pretty neat effects as well. And there's also Blaze Up, which is just copying the effect of Burial from Different Dimension and cranking it up to 11, because it's going to put back 11 of your banished Infernoids back into the graveyard, so you get to recycle them all over again. And it's generating a lot of bodies. That also banishes cards from your opponent's graveyard, so there's a lot going for this deck. And naturally, with the Snake Eye package and with the Yubel star package, it's going to be a high tier deck just right from the get-go. So we're going to have to wait and see how the balance is going to basically take care of the Snake Eye stuff, whether or not we're still going to be able to play this. Now, we're not going to be able to play this like OCG, where they have Grass is Greener, and most builds with Snake Eye Inferno, they usually include Horus and its Grass build, and they can just dump so many cards into the graveyard. We're not going to be able to do that here in TCG, and that's not a bad thing. I mean, I do miss the days of Grass, but this deck naturally can already summon out Drytron so many times. You can Drytron on the regular summon Drytron, you can special summon Drytron via Oak, you can summon back the Drytron in the graveyard via the Flamberge Dragon, and you can summon back the Drytron via Promethean Princess. They're all fires, it's just so easy to do, and you can also summon out multiple Drytrons via Void Feast as well. So there's just Drytron for days, and you're gonna see that, hey, because it's not once per turn, it's so just easy to just abuse that, and it gains great effects. Onanku and Deviati, those are two crazy effects: monster effect negation and spell trap negation, and it banishes the card, so there's like very little repercussion of getting rid of those cards. So Inferno Snake Eye, being a Snake Eye deck, it's already going to be really good. Adding Infernoids in there, now you're getting the mass negate boards that are just pretty easy to generate. Deck number 5 is going to be one of my favorite decks, Drytron. I love Drytrons, and you're going to have to wait till Infinite Forbidden before you get to play the new support. I love the new support. They gained 2 new cards. One being the Drytron New 2. It feels like a custom card for Drytron, to be honest, because it's special summoning, it does not require tribute, and then it searches a Drytron monster. I don't think there's a lot of monsters in terms of the Drytron lineup that searches a Drytron, but you do have Emergency, like Cyber Emergency, Drytron Nova. These are already cards that are doing a pretty solid job of searching you out some of these Drytron names. And when you have 2 Drytron names, you can go for the Mu Beta. Mu Beta will dump another name into the graveyard. You can also play Foolish Burial. So there's ways for Drytron to get it. But now to get a free Drytron name onto the field, not only that, it can summon itself from the hand or graveyard without tributing. So that's another, godsend for us. But it does come with a catch. You can only ritual summon out machine type monsters. So it kind of locks you out of the fairy line. But don't get me wrong, Big Daddy Drytron is the other monster added to the lineup with the 5k beat stick. It's huge, and it provides you with 2 monster negation. So it's trying to act as the fairy negation that you would typically get from the Herald of Orange Light or the Herald of Ultimateness or Perfection. It's trying to act as that negation and kind of distributing the work so that you get the spell trap negation from the Mu Beta, because now you control a Drytron ritual. And then you have this particular monster, Big Daddy Drytron. It's going to be able to negate monster effects. So in terms of like end boards that you're going to be looking at, it's pretty nasty, because these boards, if you end on just full board, like the easy full board is no special summon, spell trap negate, and 2 monster negate. That is 4 levels of disruption, and the entire graveyard's already loaded with follow-up. If you start with Nova Start plus 3 names, now you have an IP Masquerade also on the board. That is really annoying, because it can go into Dynamondo, which puts away one of your opponent's cards. Appaloosa for additional negation. SP, it has every single part of the package. But in the case where, say, you don't get to use your Drytron, and you need a normal summon because you needed to use your Diviner, then likely your end board is still kind of end in a very similar position, except that instead of having the Vanity's Ruler, you have an SP Little Knight instead, and more or less half of it's still the same. However, if you want to play Drytron right now, essentially it's still at full power without the Eva. However, it's more evil right now if you want to play it. Okay, I'm going to give you guys the example deck list that I used to make someone quit Yu-Gi-Oh! Because they didn't like losing 2 turns. I'll get into the details of that in a second. So this is Turn Skip Drytron, where you use Amber Factor Pain as your key ritual summon, and then you make Beatrice to dump Transaction Rollback, because that's easy, and you throw Thunder Ruler. When you take away someone's main phase 1, because you ritual summon Amber Factor, and that particular effect does not activate, you can't Imperm or Valor that, and you can't negate it with anything. It just happens unless you're under skill drain, you're losing your main phase 1. That's happening. The other thing is Thunder of Ruler, that trap card. Your opponent does not have a battle phase. You have to activate this during the standby phase. But when you don't have a main phase 1 and when you don't have a battle phase, guess what is the phase after that? It's straight to the end phase. It sucks to not be able to play Yu-Gi-Oh! And the end board doesn't really offer a lot of interaction for your opponent either. They have to negate Beatrice, but the worst case scenario is that Beatrice isn't exactly the issue. If you hard drew into Thunder Ruler, then you just play a quick beeline into Amber Factor so that your opponent doesn't get to play Yu-Gi-Oh! And it makes it worse because not only do you get to skip their first turn, you just have to resummon the ritual again so you can skip their turn a second time, and then you just make Beatrice to copy the effect of Thunder of Ruler by dropping in the transaction rollback to have that as the way to copy it, so you can essentially skip their turn twice. Okay, I'll be honest with you, when I side with this deck, I side the other 2 copies of Thunder of Ruler, just so that I can draw into it going first, so that I don't need to rely on Beatrice. While they wait for Beatrice, they don't realize that their turn's still gonna get skipped regardless. Like, hey, what's going on? Yeah, that's why I play Foolish Burial Goods, that's why I play Edaten, to kind of retrieve the ritual spell, so I can get there a little bit quicker. And when the board ends with just an Amber Factor Pain, they're like, oh, whatever. No, it's not whatever. You don't get to play Yu-Gi-Oh! Literally, this is worse than Calamity Lock, because Calamity Lock, maybe you can still like put a couple of phase downs. This one is, no, you don't even get a chance to set your own card, but that's how nasty the board is, and you get to skip your opponent's turn a couple of times. I think it's gonna be pretty fun for you playing Solitaire. Extra bonus deck number 1, we have Horus Stun. This is the build I am at right now. I kind of want to explain a little bit of this deck. There's no real end board to this because essentially just floodgate monster depending on which one, which matchup. Go for different ones. If you want to play against Flu, probably try to make a Dengyuju to just play through the rest of their board and just kind of end them from there. But for the most part, let me explain a couple cards. Horus, the Black Flame Deity, yes, is not really a good card. It doesn't summon itself, but it acts as something else. It acts as removal for you. If you have the field spell and you have this card, just keep revealing Horus, ditch a card, and then draw a card. You're getting a once per turn send away one of your opponent's card, and that's how you should be using Horus anyway. Not to mention that if they clear your board, you get to wipe all the monsters off the field, which is also pretty nice, so it gives you a little bit of a clapback just in case. Next thing, I'm not maxing out on Fiends and Rulers because I find that too bricky, and if you're trying to draw cards, you're gonna run into an actual Droll problem, and if Droll actually hurts, then you're likely gonna die. And what about Pot of Desires? This is the one that I kind of saw from the recent top builds. I tried it out. I tried it out myself. It wasn't too bad, and so I kept it in. Losing 1 or 2 names is not too bad, okay? Losing 3 names, okay, that's when it starts to suck. And that's why I play cards like Cashier Fenrir, because it's still a very strong card, gets you a free plus. But one of the biggest plus here has got to be the Metalfoes Fusion. I thought I wasn't going to like this card at first, but man, throwing Metalfoes Fusion into the graveyard via the King Sark, and then just putting it back into the deck and drawing another card, felt so good that it just kind of became a little bit of a mainstay. It's also pretty nice to throw away with Horus because that means you're not just drawing 1 card. After you get the King Sark, you get a second card. It's decent enough, and lots of these cards you might be wondering, I don't like to play the Rainbow Package. Trust me, I've opened all the cards. I've opened the Foolish Barrel of Goods, I've opened the Crystal Beast Rainbow Dragon, and the Rainbow Bridge Salvation. But if you got the field spell, it's so easy. just use the field spell, put back the Rainbow Dragon, okay? And then get that to turn into MST. MST effect, throw the Rainbow Bridge of Salvation to the graveyard, okay? Get the King Sark, and you also get another draw. Then use the Rainbow Bridge of Salvation effect, add the Rainbow Dragon, get yourself another field spell, and man, you just basically cycled everything. And for that extra foolish burial goods, toss that into the grave of the King Sarcophagus. Boom! Instantly everything got turned back into value. So this deck is also pretty fun. In terms of like my record at locals recently with the deck was X1. I just turned off my brain and I did better than playing with Snake Eye Fire. No, pure Snake Eye. But as for testing online, the record has been about like 8-3. I just lost the evenly matches. People randomly had evenly matches. I got really bodied by them. But it is what it is. So this is bonus deck number 1. You know, have fun if you guys want to turn off your brain. If you're wondering, oh, it's such an expensive anti-meta deck. That's because this wasn't an anti-meta deck. This was Horus Bestial beforehand, until it was no longer winnable. Bonus deck number 2. ABC with Revolution Synchrons. This is not a surprise. I'm a big fan of ABC. If you guys didn't know, this is my current build. Actually, no, this is not my full current build. I also put back Torque Tune Gear in there because I needed something that didn't share a name and I wanted an extra tuner in there, but you can put that back in there if you want. But essentially, this is the build I went for, and I also put an effect failure in so I can cross out the effect failure. Now, triple Regulus, I recommend playing through triple Regulus for this one, just so that you can see it. It turns all of your ditches into the graveyard, your Foolish Burials, turns your Dragon's Ravine, all into super live cards. And if you play tuning, if you tune the right card into the graveyard, Regulus is automatically live, giving you a free special summon. These are just monster reborns with negates attached to them, and that's essentially how we're playing it. And then once you kind of get the engine going, you realize that, hey, this is just Snake Eye with machines. And it's true, it's Snake Eye with machines. Regulus, that's kind of like your Borrowload Savage. What else is there? Your ABC Dragon Buster, that's just your Flamberge. It gets rid of monster. For them, Flamberge pushes the monster away, and it generates more monsters from, you know, stuff that you've already used. And this one summons 3 back from Banish. The Divine Temple essentially is the Union Hanger. You just put stuff in the back row, and they just push them back into the front row. Yeah, now you kind of start to see the pattern, and the end board is very similar in terms of how they interact. I have my ABC Dragon Buster acting as a banish removal. That's kind of where your SP comes in. I still can make SP, by the way. And then I have my IP, and then I can tag away my dragon so that my IP can turn into something even bigger. And I still have my Omni Negate available. Essentially, that's what this deck kind of comes down to. One of the advantage plays of this deck is that you're kind of immune to the most part to, I guess, the Infinite Imperms and the Veilers, because your normal summons are not as good as Snake Eyes, but you're more resilient to those hand traps. But one of the things that you definitely don't have, and you can't really compare to the Fire deck, is that there's no Promethean Princess equivalent in this deck. But if you do get hit by a Drone Lockbird, you can pivot into a Bagooska, which kind of ruins the opponent's turn anyway. So these are some of the options you have. If you want to learn how to kind of assess the board with this deck can extend super hard, because Revolution Synchron going into an Ancient Fairy Dragon, that's good. And then you can automatically set up an anti-nib through Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon. If you chose to negate the board some way, shape, or form, you can go into Baron de Fleur. Baron de Fleur can also be made by using the Shooting Riser Dragon and altering the level by sending one of your level 1s into the graveyard, which is typically Effect Veiler or Drone Lockbird. And when you put those into the graveyard, then you can just synchro with a 4. Now you have a Baron de Fleur. And Baron de Fleur, one of the best plays with it is that if you burned ABC's effect in the beginning and then you tagged it out, you can just use Baron de Fleur during the standby phase of that same turn and just summon back the ABC and it's live again. And one thing I kind of want to point out about like Drone Lockbird, oh, Drone Lockbird kills the deck. I thought that was the case until I did it to someone else and then they played through it and then OTK'd me. So if you get drolled on a Union Hanger and you have Rev Synchron, no, you still have a combo that still ends on an IP plus the ABC Dragon Buster. You still go all the way there. Not to mention that you also leave a Rev Synchron in the graveyard for follow-up in the future turn when you do perform a Synchro Summon of a level 7 monster. So just a quick explanation, you go activate Union Hanger, add the monster, you get drolled, normal summon out your B or C, equip into the back of the driver gets tagged out into the opposite of C or B that you didn't get, summon that monster out, synchro into Shooting Riser Dragon, dump the card into the graveyard, dump the missing name. And so what you're gonna do is You're going to link away the monsters into IP. That puts the last piece into the graveyard, so that now you have IP Masquerade, banish all three. Now you still have, you know, the ABC Dragon Buster. They're down a card, and don't forget, you can tag the ABC Dragon Buster out so that your IP Masquerade can now turn into SP. So now that he's got a triple banish board just from establishing this, and a defensive counterplay coming up. So this is not something to scoff at. Well, that's all I got for this video. I kind of wish I could talk more about future decks, but we're going to have to wait and see because we're just so close to a ban list anyway. Going too far into cooking up deep combos and deck lists, it's maybe not going to be relevant, but at least it gives me a starting point for all of these decks. I am going to be looking into Fiendsmith Magical Muskets first, just to try them out to see how they compare. I know they feel very good. In general, Link into the Veins, I died to that card, gave someone like a +4 because I couldn't respond to anything that they did. That part really sucked, so I can see why that card is becoming more and more popular, and people are definitely giving it a chance to try it out. But I'll be also exploring that, but I also kind of want to mix it in with Yubel. We're gonna see how things go. Is Bistio, is Dragon Link gonna be, you know, the bigger thing? Only time will tell. If there's a deck that you guys think is worth mentioning, leave it down in the comment section. I'd love to talk about it some more. Otherwise, I want to jump back into playing more ABCs. It just feels like playing weird Snake Eye, and I'm really used to ABC, and so the timing for me really works out. But we'll find out. Maybe I'll make a deck profile about it and take it to locals, and I'll tell you how I did. That's all I got for this one. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Have fun playing Yu-Gi-Oh, and I hope your ban list wishes come true.